Are you about to book a river cruise with Tauck, or maybe you already have, and now you're trying to figure out if you should add their travel protection to your trip or not? If so, let me help you break that down. Hi there, travel lovers. It's your trusted cruise and Tauck tour and Africa safari expert Shawn Power here. And today I wanted to talk about travel insurance or travel protection, as Tauck calls it. And specifically, I'm going to talk about how the travel protection works with Tauck River Cruises. This is a bit of a complex subject. I mean, I have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of clients myself, and we're always talking about insurance when they're booking a trip or at final payment time, depending on the cruise line. But the point is, it's something that I've been doing this for 20 years now. I've literally booked almost $100 million of travel, so I've got a lot of experience with this. And about 80% of my clients book travel insurance. A lot of people just don't want to take that risk. They don't want to lose tens of thousands of dollars if they get sick or injured, or heaven forbid a family member dies or something like that. They don't want to be in Europe or other parts of the world where they break a leg or have a heart attack and can't get treated. So most people do want to buy travel insurance. About 20% of people risk it, and it's certainly a personal choice. But because a lot of people do want to buy it, and we talk about it all the time, I want to go over a little bit more about that today. So how it works with my clients, we usually have it. Tauck is one of these companies where we need to talk about insurance up front. Some companies we don't, but Tauck we do, and I'll explain why in a moment here. I also have a lot of people who contact me on my website, through my website or my YouTube channel, who've already booked with Tauck. And they've got, maybe because Tauck says you got 10 days to book in order to be covered for pre-existing conditions. So they'll contact me and ask some questions. A lot of people will move, they'll actually move their booking to me, because if they're a first-time Tauck traveler, I can get a free hotel night for them, or if not, I can get them other perks. But the point is, we'll talk about insurance and I'll help them break that down. And you've only got 10 days. So sometimes you need to think about it pretty quickly. So basically, I want to go into what my opinion is. And I've literally sold millions and millions of dollars of Tauck trips. About 40% of my personal business is with Tauck. And so I've got a lot of experience with that company, and I've got lots of videos about why I booked Tauck so much and why they're the top-rated river cruise. I'll put that all underneath the video here in the description. We'll leave that for another time. But let's talk about Tauck's travel protection. Now, right away, I want to say that I'm not a licensed travel insurance seller. I don't work for Aon, which is the company that Tauck uses. I don't work for Allianz or Allianz, which is the company, the third-party company that I can work with. So again, I've been doing this for 20 years. I got a lot of experience. I've seen a lot of people need to use insurance. I've had to use it on my own trips. So I'm very, very familiar with it. I've had hundreds of people have to cancel their trips. But again, make sure you read the policy that you're looking to, consider to purchase. If you have any questions, call Aon, call Allianz, because again, I'll give you my interpretation. But again, I'm not, like I said, I'm not the expert here. I'm just going to tell you my experience. So I'm going to refer to some notes here, because there's a lot to cover with travel insurance, and I want to make sure I get you, as much information as you need here, or all the information you need to make a decision. So first of all, I mentioned, that Tauck says you have to book the protection within 10 days. And the reason why they say that is to cover what we call pre-existing conditions. That is the number one reason why travel claims get denied, at least in my experience. So yes, you want to buy your protection up front right away, or at least within 10 days after purchasing. And that's why, I said, we need to deal with it up front when we're talking with Tauck. So one thing to keep in mind right away is to do that, sooner than later. Now, the other thing I want to talk about is when we see, travel, again, Tauck calls it travel protection, Allianz calls it travel insurance, but it's all very similar. Whether you buy an Allianz or a Tauck insurance, which is through Aon, they're going to cover similar things. We're talking trip cancellation if you get sick or injured before you leave, or heaven forbid, like I said, there's a death in the family, something like that. It's going to cover trip interruption if you're on the trip and, you get a call that your house burnt down, or you got to fly home, again, there was a death or something like that. It's going to cover medical emergencies, again, if you break a leg or have to go to hospital in Europe or Asia or wherever you are. It's going to cover, trip delay, if you're delayed getting to your trip and you miss a portion of it, baggage loss, baggage damage, baggage delay, all that kind of stuff. So all these insurances are very similar. But whether you should buy Tauck's insurance or whether you should buy Allianz's insurance is a little bit more complex, and that's what I'm going to get into today. Now, one thing I'm going to say is, I would say 95% of my clients who go with Tauck use Tauck's travel protection. Now, when I book other trips with Regent or Oceania or Explora, different companies I work with, a lot of times we'll use Allianz, but with Tauck, it's almost always going to be using their option. And there's a few reasons why. So let me cover, what they are. Now, the first one is the price. The price is actually pretty easy to explain why that is. And I've actually made a bit of a list here because, again, I want to give you some real examples. So I book literally dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of Tauck River Cruises every year for my clients. I mean, I've been on 19 river cruises, so I've tried them all. In my opinion, Tauck is the top rated. Again, you'll see on my site why I say that. I'll put some videos underneath. But the point is, I have a lot of people go with Tauck, and so I've got a lot of data is the point. And I literally broke it down today out of the dozens and dozens of people I just booked over the last year. My average client spends $13,000 per person with Tauck. Now that actually makes sense to me because most of my clients do at least 12 or 14 nights. They usually do the Blue Danube or the Maine and Moselle, which are 12 to 14 nights. They almost always do the top deck category 7 rooms. Or the category 5 rooms on some ship. Again, we can talk about that, if you're ever booking a trip with me. But the point is that a lot of these trips are going to be like 11, 8, 12 and change. So 13,000 per person makes sense. So let me give you some real numbers here. So with Tauck's travel protection, it's $799 flat. That's it. Whether your trip is 8 grand, 10 grand, 13 grand, and there's some more expensive Tauck River cruises because they have some trips that are 2 to 3 weeks. So some can be like 20 grand. But the point is it does not matter. It's $799. Now with Allianz, and also it doesn't matter on age. They don't base it on any of that. It's just $799, simple as that per person. Now with Allianz and any other company, Travel Guide or whoever, but I just give Allianz as an example because that's the company I work with for other cruises that that I sell to my clients. They're going to look at your age. They're going to look at the state you live in, and they're also going to look at how much your trip is. So basically, as your trip gets more expensive, so does the price of insurance. As you get older, I hate to say it, but they consider you a bigger risk and the price goes up and up. So here's some real numbers. So again, looking at the $13,000 that on average my clients spend with Tauck, if I was to insure them with Allianz, the average Tauck client is 67 years old. I'm actually on Tauck's advisory board. Now, by the way, I don't get paid extra to work with Tauck. I choose to because my clients love them. They go with them again and again. Tauck doesn't ask me to do these videos. I mean, I own my own business. I can work with who I want, but it's just Tauck is a great company. So like I said, I actually happen to be on their advisory board because I do so much business with them. They want my, my feedback as well as, some other colleagues in the industry. But point being, I know Tauck's average age is 67 years old. And that really tracks with my clientele right around there as well. So if someone is 67 years old and I set up Allianz, and let's say they're in California, like a lot of my clients are in California and Texas and New York and Florida, but I'm just using California because again, it goes by state. Someone who's 67 with Allianz will pay $1,465, $1,465. Now I mentioned Tauck is $799. So right away, it's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds less to use Tauck. So this is the easy part to figure out if the price is better with Tauck or not. A lot of my clients are older. So if they're 71 to 75, they're going to pay $1,830 with Allianz. If they're 76 to 80 years old, $2,282. And if they're 81 or higher, $2,867 is with Allianz or $799 with Tauck. So you can see Tauck price-wise usually looks pretty good. And even if you're in your mid 50s, like 56 to 60 is 1143, 51 to 55 is 1031. I actually looked at it. You have to be 25 or younger for your insurance to be like $710 with Allianz. So like unless you're really young, it's almost for sure going to be cheaper with Tauck. Now I do get some kids that go on Tauck with I book a lot of multi-generation trips. Grandma, grandpa who take their kids, their adult kids who take the grandkids. So this happens sometimes. So yes, this might change things, my advice, but if you're a couple 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, it's almost for sure going to be cheaper with Tauck. And even if your trip is a little bit less, let's say it's around $10,000, maybe you do a 10-day cruise or something like that. Again, if you're in that 67 range where a lot of Tauck clients are, $1,069 is going to be Allianz's cost. 71 to 75, $1,333. If you're 76 to 80, $1,661. And if you're 81 or older, $2,085. So again, Tauck is going to be less quite often. Now, I do notice that $10,000 price point for your cruise, if you're 51 to 55, you'll pay $756 with Allianz. So then it starts to, then the question is, okay, it's close enough. Do I go with Tauck? Do I go with Allianz? Again, I'm going to help you break that down because there's some other reasons that you may want to consider as well. Now, the one exception I would say where Tauck is not the best deal is the Christmas market cruises. I sell a lot of Christmas market cruises, but they're only a week long. And because they're off season, a lot of times they might be like $5 or $6 grand a person. So when you put in, when you're insuring $5 or $6 grand with Allianz, that's, might be $500, $600, $700. So a lot of times that's going to be actually better with Allianz. But again, I'm going to break this down for you if you're my client. Even if I'm sure your travel agent is going to do the same. Or like I said, if you're booking with Tauck or something directly, you're not sure, contact me. And again, I can work with you even if you already have booked with them. So that's not an issue, and you'll get some extra perks and stuff. So like I said, so price-wise, Tauck almost wins every time. So that's the number one reason why you may want to consider using Tauck, and it's why literally 95% of my clients who travel with Tauck use their travel protection for river cruises. Now, number two reason is if you, okay, so just so you know, the deposit to book a Tauck River Cruise is $900. So 900, and it's 100% non-refundable. So if you book a trip with Tauck, and most people are booking these trips a year and a half, 2 years out, Tauck sells out so early compared to everyone else. It's right now the third quarter or fourth quarter almost of 2025. There's so many 2026 days I can't get my clients on. I'm already booking them 27. We already have some 2027 sold out dates. So because Tauck has the fewest guests on board, the most they have is 65 rooms on their ships, and a lot of their ships actually have less. They sell out early. So the point is that you got to book early. So right away, people, have got to put down a $900 refundable deposit or non-refundable deposit. Sorry, so $900 non-refundable deposit. So right away, if you get a $900 refundable deposit and you buy Allianz insurance, and let's say you just change your mind, so you booked the cruise a year and a half, 2 years out, final payment is 4 months before you leave. Well, basically, you just say, I don't want to go. Well, Allianz is not going to cover, I don't want to go. So basically, you're not going to get your money back for insurance with Allianz, and you're also not going to get your $900 back with Tauck. Now, one of the advantages you're using Tauck's protection, which again is $799, is if you cancel before final payment time, and they don't even care what the reason is, they don't even ask, you're going to get the $900 deposit back. So here's what I say to people. If you know you're going to buy insurance, because some people say, oh, I'll buy it at final payment time. I don't care if I'm covered for pre-existing conditions. It doesn't matter. But the point is like, don't delay it, because if you know you're going to buy it anyway, you might as well buy it up front, because then you're giving them $799 for insurance, $900 per person for the deposit. And then if you cancel, well, you're going to lose the $799, but you'll get the $900 back. Now that's only an extra $101 in your pocket back, but still, why lose extra is the point. So if you know you're going to add it, do it up front, because you'll get pre-existing condition coverage, and you'll only lose $799 up until final payment time instead of $900. So something to keep in mind. So that's why, again, Tauck's is a little bit more advantageous, because there's no, they don't care why you cancel up until final. Now, after final payment, like any insurance, you got to cancel for a covered reason. So sickness, injury, like I said, death in the family, there's a whole list. So when you see these policies, you'll see a whole list of reasons you can cancel. So do make sure you cover, you go over that to make sure why you can cancel and get your money back. So speaking of canceling after final payment, this is the third reason why I do think most times it's going to make sense to go with Tauck's option, and maybe it's just going to be a little bonus, bonus reason. But what happens is, if you buy Tauck's insurance, they cut their penalties in half. So let me explain what that means. So like I said, back to the deposit. Normally you're going to lose the $900, but if you have the protection, you'll only lose $799. So I already talked about that, and you're going to lose a little bit less. But let's look at the actual penalties. So if you book a Tauck River Cruise and you do not have their insurance, if you cancel from the day after final payment, so if you cancel from 119 days till 60 days before you travel, you're going to lose 50% of everything that you paid. So again, let's go back to that $13,000 number. If you cancel between 119 days and 60 days, you'll lose $6,500 of that. Then if you cancel between 59 days and the day before the cruise, you lose 100%. And that's the same with a lot of companies. They have, depending on how late you cancel, you're going to lose more and more money. The closer you get, you're going to lose 100%. So with Tauck, again, if you don't have their insurance, you'll lose 50% if you cancel between 119 days and 60 days, or again, between 59 days and 1 day, you're going to lose 100%. Now, why is this important? Because if you buy Tauck's insurance for $799, they cut those penalties in half. So if all of a sudden you cancel at 119 days to 60 days before, Tauck only keeps 25%, and you've got to put a claim in to get the other 25% back from Aon, which is the company they use. Or let's say it's 59 days to 1 day before, instead of keeping 100%, Tauck will keep 50%, and again, you've got to put in a claim to get the other 50% back. So in my experience, here's a couple of reasons why that might matter. So let me give you an example, and I hate to say it, but I've seen this many times over the years. Again, I've been doing this for 20 years and almost $100 million in sales, of travel for my clients. So I've literally had hundreds of bookings. I've seen it multiple times where somebody's friend dies. Sad situation. I'm talking like best friend, and they pass away, and they just don't want to travel. They're like, there's no way I'm going to Europe or Asia and having a good time. When my friend passed, I got to go to the funeral. I need to be with his or her family, and we all understand what that's about. So I hate to say it, but if you have Allianz insurance or Travel Guide or any other insurance out there, they just don't cover friends. So here's the good part. So let's say it's a week or two before the cruise and you've given Tauck $26,000, 13 per person, $26,000. Tauck keeps the 26 grand. You're not going to get 5 cents back because Allianz is not going to give you, they're not going to approve your claim because it's a friend. It's just not a family member. With Tauck, remember I said they cut the penalty in half. So instead of losing $26,000, you're only going to lose 13. I'm not saying $13,000 is not a lot of money to lose, but it's better than losing 26. So the point is, if you have Tauck's insurance, the most you will ever lose is 50% of what you paid. So again, Tauck keeps 50%, but again, if you cancel for a cover reason, you put in a claim, and then Aon gives you the money back. But the most you can lose is 50%. So again, it's something to consider. Now, I mentioned friend. Also, let me mention cousins because that's a big deal for people. I don't know why, but all the insurance companies are the same. They'll cover, when it comes to family members, they'll cover your parents, they'll cover your siblings, they'll cover your spouse, they'll cover your aunts and uncles, your kids, of course, all your immediate family, but they don't cover cousins. I don't know why. I guess because some people literally have dozens or 100. I've heard of people having 100 cousins. So I guess it's just too many people. But the point is, again, same thing. Let's say you have close cousins, and especially if one of them are sick or something like that, and heaven forbid, you don't want to go. They're just not going to cover that. Again, with Tauck, the most you'll lose is 50%. Also, let's say you're you and your spouse are having shaky times. I've literally had that with clients where they weren't sure if they were going to stay together. They had a trip booked. At least with Tauck, if they pulled out last minute, they don't lose half of that. Pets, everyone loves their pets. Most companies aren't going to cover pets if something goes wrong or if they're just sick or whatnot. Let's say you have a lot of my clients are business owners. I'm a business owner. A lot of my clients are business owners. Same thing. If something happens and you're just like, I can't leave, I got to stay, or things are going to fall apart, I'm going to lose tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars. Well, of course you're not going to go on your trip, but again, the most you'll lose is 50%. So something to keep in mind again is that the most you can lose with Tauck's insurance is 50%. So and when I say 50%, you're always going to lose insurance as well, of course. So keep that in mind. Like if it's a $26,000 trip for the cruise, and then you pay another $799 each for insurance, they'll give you back 13,000, 13,000, they'll keep. You're always not going to get the insurance back. So, I think that's probably, you guys understand that from the start of this, I'm sure. But the point is it limits everything. So let's just see if we can cover the three things here that I talked about. Number one, at least in my experience, the price of Tauck insurance is always less, like just about always less than it is with a third party like Allianz, Travel Guard, etc. Number two, when you have their insurance, right away, you instead of losing the deposit, no matter the reason you cancel, you'll actually get that 900 back if you cancel up until final. So it limits, you're going to lose a little bit less there. Instead of losing 900, you lose 799. So you'll save a few bucks there. The third thing is they cut the penalties in half. Again, big deal. If you have a friend or a a friend or a cousin or someone who's sick, shaky relationship, or something's not going to go with business, if you're just worried you might have to cancel for a non-covered reason, this cuts your penalties in half. Is going to limit your loss by quite a bit. So I think that's the three main reasons why it makes sense to use Tauck's, Tauck's insurance. Is why 95% of my clients do. Of course, any questions, let me know, and I'll do my best to clarify as best I can. But I do want to mention a few final notes here, a couple of more things that I think is unique about Tauck's travel protection. So number one is, people always say to me, okay, if I buy Tauck's insurance for $799, will it cover my flights if I buy them on my own? And the reason why a lot of people want to buy their flights on their own is because I tell them to. Again, I've got articles and videos on this. You're almost always going to overpay for airfare with Tauck. I mean, I've traveled with Tauck 12 times. I always check the price of airfare. It's like usually, 25, 30, 40, 50% more than me buying it through the airline directly. So literally none of my clients book airfare through Tauck, which is a smart thing. But they say, well, will Tauck cover my airfare if I cancel? Strangely enough, they will. Most companies won't, but Tauck will, but there's a little bit of a nuance. So let me explain it. So let's say you're doing, like, one of the biggest trips my clients do is the Blue Danube. They might fly into Budapest and fly out of Prague. So what the insurance says, as long as you fly into as long as you fly into Budapest or wherever it starts, if it starts in Prague, because it goes different directions. But let's say it's starting in Budapest. As long as you fly into Budapest, and as long as you fly out of Prague, and as long as you're not staying in those cities for any more than 14 extra nights on top of the Tauck trip, as long as you cancel for a covered reason, you can put in a claim and get your money back for the airfare as well that you booked, even if you booked it direct with the airlines and not through Tauck. Now, keep in mind the whole 50% penalties doesn't count here, because Tauck didn't buy your airfare, you bought directly with the airline. So let's say you buy $5,000 business class airfare and you cancel, and they keep it all. Tauck can't give you back the $2,500. What's actually happened is you're putting in a claim with your insurance company, Aon, to get your money back for the airfare on top of the Tauck trip that you're canceling. But the point is, this is kind of unique. So again, as long as you're flying into the city you're starting at, flying out of the city that you're ending at, not adding any more than 14 extra days on. And by the way, most of my clients, they add their extra days on with Tauck. Like Tauck usually gets some really good hotel rates, or at least the same, but they include transfers and breakfast. So it's a smart thing to do. And almost all my clients book their hotels with Tauck through me. But the point is that most people already have their pre and post book with Tauck anyway. But even if they don't, you're staying there a couple of days because you got Marriott points and you got free hotels, as long as you're not doing more than 14 days. So again, that's a great thing. So again, airfare could potentially be covered, and it does mention that right in their policy. Now, another thing is, this is a good one, multi-trips. So if you follow me at all, you watch my videos, you're on my website, you've been a client of mine for years, as many people have or are, I do a lot of multi-trips. So like I just got back this summer, I did a Silver Sea cruise. A day later, I got on a Tauck River Cruise. A day later, I got on an Alma River Cruise. So the point is, I did 3 back-to-back trips. I've done that many times in Europe. I have so many of my clients who do that. I literally just booked 2 couples yesterday on 2 trips each for next year. So a lot of people do back-to-back trips. Again, there's reasons why to do that. I'll put the video underneath if I think about it. But the point is like if you do 2 back-to-back trips with Tauck, so let's say you do a Tauck Rhine and Moselle River Cruise, which is 14 nights. You get off, you fly over to Budapest, and then you do the Blue Danube. Again, lots of my clients do that. They'll go to Europe for like 3 or 4 weeks. As long as your trip is within like 4 days of each other, Tauck gives you your insurance for free on the second trip or whatever the more expensive trip is. And this is also too, if you do a small ship ocean cruise with Tauck or a land tour, I can make this happen as well. But let me just give you the river cruise example. So you do these 2 trips. So let's think about this. Let's say it's $13,000 per person to do the Rhine and Moselle and $13,000 per person to do the Blue Danube. You're now spending $26,000 per person. Tauck will charge you insurance on the first trip. On the second trip, you actually do have to pay the $799 again to get the insurance, but then Tauck gives you a $799 discount. You've literally paid $800 or $799 to insure $26,000. Now we go back to those charts in the beginning. To insure $26,000 would be $2,600. $3,000 for the people in their 80s is over 20%. It would literally be $5,000 plus dollars. So the point is, you're insuring it with Tauck for $799. That is ridiculously cheap. So again, if you're going to do a multi-trip with Tauck, it is going to be a lot cheaper to do it with them dramatically in that situation. And I've had people do 3 back-to-back trips. I just had a couple do that, this summer, a few weeks back. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is where Tauck's insurance may not work best for you. So let's say, again, you do one of these multi-trips like I do, or you just go see family or friends, you do something else. So here's what I mean. Let's say you fly to Prague and you do a Blue Danube River Cruise and you end up in Budapest. And then you're like, we're going to fly to Paris and spend a week there and then go to London for a few days or wherever, it doesn't matter, and then we're going to go home. Well, again, Tauck's not going to cover you outside of the cities that you're doing with them. So the problem is now you're gone for maybe another few days or a week or two, and there's no coverage. So then people say to me, well, maybe I need to do Allianz, because the nice part about Allianz or Travel Guard or any of these third parties is from the day you leave home till the day you return home, they're going to cover you for medical emergencies the whole time. But again, the problem is with Tauck, if again you do that Blue Danube, you'll be covered for medical emergencies and cancellation for that trip. But again, you're off in Europe, they're not going to cover you. So a lot of my clients say, well, I guess I got to go with Allianz, bite the bullet and pay way more just so I'm covered the whole time. Not quite. So here's what I do for my clients. Especially when they're in the higher ages, when people, I just did this for someone who was, I think, 83 recently, and it saved them a dramatic amount of money. So let's go back and look at that chart again. So let's say someone's doing a $13,000 per person Tauck trip. Let's go back to that 67-year-old, because again, that's the average. It's $1,465 to get insured with Allianz instead of $799. So you're talking, I don't know, $650 or more to do Allianz insurance. Rather than do that, what I do for my clients is we still set them up with the $799 per person insurance with Tauck, and then I go to Allianz and I buy them a medical only policy. Again, we're not going to cover cancellation. We're not going to cover the $13,000. We're actually going to cover 0 for cancellation, but they'll still get the medical They even get baggage loss, delay, and all that. But like I said, you get that with Tauck anyway, so it's kind of almost double, being double insured. But the point is, for that 67-year-old, they're only going to pay, what is it, $101 for a medical only policy that covers them from the day they leave till the day they return home. So if you look at it, $799 to Tauck, $101 to Allianz, $900. That's way better than $1,465, and especially when you times it by two when you got a couple. So I'm not sure if that made sense, but here's all you need to know. If you're a client of mine, I'm always going to do my best to do what makes sense for you. And here's what I can tell you, by the way. This is a little secret. I probably shouldn't even say it, but I'm going to anyway. When I offer you Tauck insurance, and when I do Allianz insurance, you all know we get paid commissions in the industry. That's not a secret. It never comes out of your pocket. You're going to pay the same anyway. Like I said, if you go to Tauck Direct, you're still paying for my commissions whether you work with me or not. The only thing is when you go to Direct, you don't get my perk. So that's why most people book with agents, because they want the perk. But the point is we make commissions. If I was to book Allianz insurance for you, I would make double the percentage commission that I would with Tauck. So the point is, I hate to say this, but I've seen this with my own eyes. I've been doing this again for 20 years. I've seen agents who will only sell Allianz because they're making double the percentage commission than they do with the cruise lines. I'm not about that at all. So again, if you're my client, I'm going to look at what's best for you. If it makes sense to do Tauck's insurance, I'm going to do that. If it makes sense to do Tauck's insurance plus a small, medical only with Allianz, I'm going to do that. I do hope your traveling, agent is like that as well. But the point is, I'm always going to look at creative ideas to do whatever makes sense for you. So anyway, I know this is a big topic. I know it's confusing. I know some of this might have just, been not, clearly, spelled out by me. I do my best, but, I'm sure I kind of said a few things that might have mixed you up. So any comments at all, leave me a message on my YouTube channel. Go to my website at shawnpower.com, fill out the contact form and let me know. Or if you're a client, you got my email. So anything I can do to help make this topic easier for you, I'm happy to do. I hope you got some value from this today. And I do look forward to chatting with you in the next video. And have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye, guys. All the best.